No supporting role is more brilliantly and widely carried out in air mobile operations than the role of the combat engineers. They too take to the air along with their equipment and supplies to perform their key function of clearing the way for the fighting infantry.
My name is Michael J. Mullarkey. I was drafted in 1966, January. So I guess in 1967 I ended up going to Vietnam. Going from civilian life to military life was actually good for me because I was working a job I really didn't like. So this was a new adventure for me. So I actually enjoyed it. And when I went to, when you go to basic training, you have to go for your uniforms. They give you all new uniforms and everything. So I remember what impressed me the most when I walked in to get my uniforms. It said, "You're about to become the best dressed soldier in the world." The place we used to hang out in Queens, it was about maybe 20, 25 of us. And I would say maybe a third or almost half of us got drafted around the same time or in a couple months afterwards. So my friend Eddie White, Dennis Hall, Steve Sermon, myself, who else? A couple other guys. And a couple of us went to basic training together. When I was going through basic training and stuff, when we come out of basic training, actually, just before we went into basic training, I was drafted, so it was a 2-year. So then they told us about this signal communications that you could get into. It was a 6-month thing. And unfortunately, you'd have to do 3 years. You'd have to do an extra year. So me and my friend Dennis Hall and Eddie White choose that. So you had to do an extra year to get into the signal school, which was in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, close to home. And it was good. I felt like I was doing my duty as an American, and I thought it was my time. So I felt good about it, actually. And I was a little nervous or whatever about it, but it was a challenge, and I was up for it. Initially, I was in Benoit. That's where I landed. And then they finally placed me from the 90 Replacement Center to Long Ben. And from Long Ben, I was in Vong Tau. And then I came back to Long Ben. So in that whole area, I used to travel through. So that was basically most of the time that I was over there. Most of the time I was in somewhat safe areas, but you know, any place over there you could have been injured or whatever. So basically I wasn't really like shooting at people, but I was definitely in areas where I could have got shot or blown up, whatever. No, most of the guys that I worked with were, you know, doing their job, doing their duty for the country, and felt good about it. You know, I think I've only met like one guy that was like debating about why we're there, why we're doing this. But most of the time, the guys I was with, you know, wanted to do their job and do their time and finish up whatever they had to do. The job that I had to do when I was in Vietnam, I was in communications. So basically, we were hooking up communication. We had portable truck units and stuff. We'd hook them up, and then hook them up to the units, different units that were there. And then we had major hookups sometimes in Saigon and stuff. We also would do radio, we could do communications to different, we had like microwave shots that they hooked up in Vong Tau Mountain. So that was that. But then eventually I ended up being in charge of a group of like 22 guys, but we were in like pretty good size forts, you know, bases. So, but I was there during the Tet Offensive, and that's when it got a little scary because Well, they were hitting all around, but they blew up a partial ammo dump, which is about maybe 5 miles from where we were. And I saw this red ball. I came out like I just eaten, and I come out and it was like I was working a night shift. And I came out and I saw this red ball. I'm looking at this thing and it was getting bigger and bigger. It looked like an atom blast. So then I could see, I'm saying, I could see like the shock wave coming. So I freaking hit the deck, and the place where I was eating rattled all the walls and stuff. And then I ran down to where the barracks was, and some of the guys were down there were throwing out at beds saying, "What's going on?" I go, "Well, I don't know what's going on, but you better get your stuff together." So that was one incident during Tet that was kind of scary, and then you see all the gunships and stuff flying, and that probably went on like for 2 days. With the Vietnamese people, I ran into them. Well, some of them worked on our base, and we'd help them out. So that, I mean, it was very, very poor people, but very nice people, and to me, hard workers. I knew that we were in Vietnam to stop the spread of communism, basically. And I knew that from high school, because I remember in my high school history class, when we had just advisors in Vietnam, I remember my history teacher saying either we're going to have to go in there full force or pull completely out, and to stop the spread of communism. So basically, I was there to protect the people from the North Vietnamese, which was at that time communist, and basically that's what I was doing. Unfortunately, I felt real bad when, in the end, in 1975, when we pulled out and left those people that basically were our friends. And I don't think we should have, but that was the decision of the government. So I felt a little bad there, you know. I come back to the States and people looking at us like we did something wrong. But meanwhile, what I was doing, I did a lot to, I think, help the country. The second time I came back, I remember walking in San Francisco at the airport, and I remember saying to my buddy, he was walking with a cane. I said, "Now, if anybody spits on me," I said, "I'm not going to take that." I said, "And you're going to be with me?" He said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll be with you." So I mean, that's what basically what we came back to. And luckily, nobody spit on me at that point. Well, the second, I was a little disappointed, but then when I got back after the second tour, then I was seeing a little more and how the government and stuff was sort of running this war. So I was getting a little disappointed about that too, because it was like a political war, and I was realizing that they didn't really want to win this war, and even during the Tet Offensive, when they had the Tet Offensive, which I was over there for, I mean, the newspapers back in the States made it look like we lost the war, but meanwhile, any of their Tet offenses that they did hit us with, they were beat back. So they didn't really lose the war, although the news people made it look like the war was over and we were defeated, which was not the case. You know, and then when Nixon tried to make a peace with the North Vietnamese and stuff, and they were arguing about the table and the whole bit, which is. Then he started bombing Hanoi, and he started bombing the harbor, which was actually, well, if you want to stop the enemy from shooting at you, you cut off their supplies. So he was the only guy that did that. You know, meanwhile, the rest of the world before that was supplying the enemy. So then I got a little discouraged about the war after that, because there was, you know, Americans were dying, and they weren't trying to stop the war. I mean, fight the war properly the way it should have been. It's a military that basically gives us our freedom today and always. Speeches can be made by politicians. You can speak whatever you want, but it's the military that actually gives you your freedom, not some politician saying you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. It's our military that backs up the word of the United States, and that's why we have our freedom. I have a lot of my friends that were Vietnam veterans and stuff, and they went through a lot more than what I went through. And you know, if I speak up for them, and I mean, they did their duty, and they came back to the States, and they were not appreciated, and then they weren't given jobs because they left their jobs. So they were definitely unappreciated. And hopefully now it's sort of like the tide has turned, and now they're recognizing. Like when soldiers get off the plane now, people clap for them and stuff. But when I get off, I didn't see anybody clapping for me. So what we got to take from this war is that don't get into war too quickly. And if you do, support the troops the right way.